He's under huge pressure on a whole number of fronts, one of which, of course, is what is the Labour Party policy on Brexit. Now, today he's been in Dublin, he's been with the Irish Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, and, of course, he's been asked once again by the press, what does he want to see? How is the Brexit deadlock going to be broken? And this was what Jeremy Corbyn had to say about a general election.
Our first priority would be actually a general election. Look, it's 2 years since the last general election. This government has no legislative programme worthy of the name. It has been incompetent, to say negligent in its negotiations with the EU, changing its stance many times, almost as often as it's changed its Brexit secretaries. And now we have a Tory party leadership contest which appears to be between no deal, and no deal. Well, this is not acceptable. I think the public deserve the right to elect a new parliament and elect a new government that can go on from there.
So, of course, that's the line he's been trotting out all the way through this, not really saying quite where Labour stands on Brexit, but consistently saying there should be a general election, but setting himself very clearly against what he calls a no deal, what I'd call a WTO Brexit or a clean break Brexit. But then he was asked again, specifically about his views on a second referendum.
We don't back a rerun of 2016. That happened, that's gone.
Right.
What I do say is that if Parliament comes to an agreement, then it's reasonable that if Parliament wishes it, there should be a public vote on it.
Well, I don't know whether you're any the wiser. I'm not. I mean, it's couched in language that really is very difficult to understand. You know, he's got his deputy Tom Watson screaming at him, much of his parliamentary party screaming at him. So, you know, they want him to come out fully in favour of a second referendum, and because he won't, they did lose votes last Thursday to the Liberal Democrats. But because he won't actually say that he really wants Brexit to happen, they're also losing votes, of course, to the Brexit Party and others. So they're in a hell of a mess. But what he is saying, and I think this is relevant, he's saying either there's got to be a general election or a second referendum. And I have to say, I think that generally is the conversation. It's difficult to see how our Parliament can go on in crisis as it is. So I'm going to ask you today, which would you prefer? Would you prefer sometime this year a general election or a second referendum? And if you think a general election is the way to sort this out, call 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think a second referendum is fair and justified because we didn't really know what we were voting on last time. Text to 84850. Or are you completely and utterly fed up with being asked to vote again and again and again and would rather neither happened, in which case tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, the growing number of you watching us live on Facebook will no doubt have your two penneth as well. I have to say I am opposed to a second referendum being fought. It seems to me that you can't hold a second referendum until you first implemented the original one. It's very anti-democratic and wrong, I think, to force it again. But I'm going to say this, I haven't said it before. If we have not left on the 31st of October, which is the new date that we're supposed to leave the European Union, if we are failed once again by government and parliament, then I think there should be a general election later on this year. I just think we've had enough of repeatedly being made promises that get broken. So that is very much my view. Let's go to Steve, who's a new caller in Beckenham. Good evening, Steve, and welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. So which would you prefer, Steve?
Well, I don't think a general election can really solve anything at the moment, because I don't really think that we have a really good sense of the will of the people. I heard you and plenty of other people say 17 odd million people voted to leave. I mean, almost as many people voted to stay, and just as many people didn't vote at all. The figures that you're trying out there really are only a third of the population, really, of this voting population who decided they want to leave, and that's not really enough. I think if you're going to focus on anything at all, it shouldn't be on trying to convince leavers to stay or stayers to leave, but to find out what the rest of the people that didn't vote at all want.
Well, how on earth, Steve? How on earth, Steve, can you do that? And by the way, bear in mind...
I'll tell you how you do it.
One second. Bear in mind that when Tony Blair won the general election in 2005, he only got 35% of the vote, and of the population, between 20 and 25%. So, election. No, Steve, my point is this: elections are decided surely by those that choose to vote.
Well, yes, but it doesn't have to be that way, does it? Because in actual fact, if you feel that change is something that you want, you would get off and vote about it. What you have is people that bothered enough to get off their backsides and say, yes, I'd like things exactly the way they are. But I would consider that every one of those people that didn't vote also feel that way. Why would you bother getting up and voting to remain the same? I think you can count all of those people as stay voters. Now, you're not gonna like the sound of that.
Steve, that's nonsense, isn't it? That's nonsense.
It's not nonsense at all, is it? Because if you cared enough for change, you'd get off and do something about it.
No, because Steve, even in the heyday,
let me finish my point.
Even in the heyday, Steve, even in the heyday, when turnouts were high in this country, general election turnouts, I think the all-time record since the war was 82%.
This isn't the general election. This is a different thing. This is a binary decision. What you couldn't do is that with a choice of three parties, you can't make those kind of assumptions. But with a binary choice, like yes or no, in or out, what you can do quite safely is say, we're going to assume that everybody is in unless you tell us you want to be out. It's just like saying about being an organ donor or something like that. We make a basic assumption about your standpoint. If you don't like that basic assumption, please feel free to come and tell us what you would prefer.
Steve,
that is the choice that should have been put forward.
Steve, if you assumed...
That is the choice that should have been put forward.
If you assumed that the non-voting majority supported the status quo, there'd be almost no point ever holding any referendum, would there?
Well, of course there would, because if you cared enough to make it to tell people that you wanted change, you would say something about it. Now, you're saying that from the point of view of somebody that wants us to leave. So what you have...
No, Steve. No, Steve.
I'm a certain way as a win, Nigel, and I don't really think that's the case.
Steve, I'm saying that elections are decided by those who choose to go and vote. We could, of course, move to a system of compulsory voting. Would you prefer to see that?
Well, I don't think we need to fine people for not voting, but I think you can make a basic assumption about how they feel. You don't have to fine people that don't vote. What you can say is, we think you're staying unless you tell us you want to leave. I think that's a perfectly reasonable standpoint. Right. And it includes everybody in it.
So you don't want...
doesn't feel like they want that assumption being made. It's perfectly free to go and vote and tell us that they think differently. But then you're including everybody in that vote.
So would you choose a general election or a referendum?
Well, I would choose personally a referendum, because I don't think a general election can make any difference. There's no clear policy in any... I wouldn't vote for the Brexit Party. I wouldn't support the Brexit Party unless I knew that a clear majority in the country, not just the people that bother to vote, but the people that, all of the population, in all of its colours and majesty, actually chooses to vote for that. Then how can you do anything other than support the Brexit Party? But at the moment, you've got a third of the population that didn't give you an opinion at all. How can you... I mean, you wouldn't change the fortunes of any organisation with that little support. You have a third of the support of the country. It's not enough, Nigel.
Well, Steve, I have to say, I've heard a lot of political arguments over the years. That one's very new on me, and I thank you for it. OK, Nigel, bring on an election, says Patricia in Whitstable. She's up for a general election. Corbyn's strategy has backfired on him. His mission is for an election and for the Labour Party to be put into power. His own party is scuppering his manoeuvring and manipulations. Caroline, he is looking a very long way away from much of his own party. Scott reckons we were missold and lied to during the first campaign for Brexit. Scott, I agree with you. In 1975, the lies that were told to the British people, to my parents' generation, were completely outrageous. We deserve a second vote. We did. We had one in 2016. And I'm bored with this. Well, I tell you what, Scott, the idea that it was a unique thing that somehow someone told lies in an election. You could say that of every single election campaign that's ever been fought since the dawn of time. But I do repeat the point. The willful lies that were told by Heath and others in the 70s. My goodness me. Graham is a new caller from Newcastle. Hi, Graham. Graham, hello. Nope, I haven't got... I'm going to go to Kevin, who is calling from Pontypool.
Pleasure to speak to you, Nigel.
Hello, Kevin. So, Corbyn appears to be all over the show, but increasingly, there is a feeling, Kevin, that something's got to break here. Which would you prefer to see?
General election. That's what the way I would go.
Right.
And get you into number 10.
Right. Well, I don't know about that, but who's to say? Do you think, Kevin, if there was a general election, that we could see some big shifts in voting patterns across the UK?
Oh, no doubt at all. Well, with the two major parties all over the place, who's going to vote for them?
Well, some people still were. I mean, so you really believe that we're on the point of some massive shift occurring, yeah?
Absolutely, yes.
Interesting. I mean, you're calling from a part of the world where, the Labour Party since 1918 have dominated politics, haven't they?
Yes.
And your sense is they wouldn't if there was a general election this autumn?
I I think there would be a large change away from him, to be honest, especially the way the Labour Party is at the moment with Corbyn. I don't think he'd be there for long, to be honest.
Well, given the current rows he's having with his own deputy leader and much of his own parliamentary party, he might be in trouble. Although, Kevin, there are hundreds of thousands of £3 members in the Labour Party who do support him. But I don't know. Kevin, thank you for your call. And Kevin, taking the point, and it is a debate, that a shift has occurred in British politics, that the European elections last week showed that. All of that's valid, although, of course, we do have a first-past-the-post electoral system. If we had a system with proportionality, then I think a general election could give us radically different results. It's not so certain with the system that we've got. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusive at LBC. It's 6:15 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
President Trump's hinted he may meet up with Nigel and Conservative leadership hopeful Boris Johnson during his state visit to the UK next week. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn says a general election or a second referendum are now the only options if the UK faces a no-deal Brexit scenario. An investigation started after a young boy reportedly fell from a rollercoaster ride at a theme park in North Yorkshire. LBC weather, cloudy and very mild for most of the UK tonight, a low of 9 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler. It's slow on the M25 anti-clockwise between junction 21A for St Albans and junction 18 for Chorleywood after an accident. There are queues on the North Circular eastbound approaching the Crooked Billet interchange after an accident as well, and it's struggling southbound through the Blackwall Tunnel. That's after a motorbike broke down earlier. In the centre of town, there are queues on the Strand westbound approaching Trafalgar Square because of a breakdown, and on the tubes there's no service on the Central Line from Liverpool Street to Woodford and Hainault.
This is LBC.
Mum, are we nearly there yet?
Almost. I'll fill up and you can grab a treat.
Yes! Can I scan your phone this time?
Shell Go Plus, the new rewards programme on your phone that makes every visit better. Like getting money off fuel every 10 visits. And even more off Shell V-Power. Plus 10% off hot drinks and a range of food every visit.
And maybe the chance to keep backseat drivers happy.
Download the Shell app today. Good things happen when you Go Plus it. Conditions apply. See goplus.shell.com for details.
This is LBC.
Ticket market, how can I help?
I'd like a ticket to Wellness Fest 2019, please. It's a weekend of self-discovery.
How would you like to pay?
Well, I believe money is a societal construct and that true value...
Credit card, debit card?
Oh, right.
Some people think they're so special, but with the daily jackpot on Paddy Power Games, someone wins by 10 p.m. every day. So don't think you're special if you win it.
Address, please.
I like to think of myself as a citizen of Earth.
Paddy Power Games. Jackpots must be awarded by 10 p.m. and vary from day to day. Jackpots shared with other operators. Available on selected games. T's and C's at paddypower.com. 18+, begambleaware.org.
Would you and your business benefit from a personal approach from your accountant? At Barnes Rofe, of course, our partners have the technical skills needed to offer you first-class audit, tax and accounting advice. But most importantly, we'll work closely with you to help your business grow long-term. Perhaps it's time to see what we can do for you. Arrange your free consultation at barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
Your business has come this far, but now's your time to soar into the skies of spectacular with a fast, affordable Funding Circle business loan. With decisions in as little as 24 hours and a dedicated account manager, there's no waiting around. So join the thousands of businesses who have taken out a Funding Circle loan and help your business fly. Apply today at fundingcircle.com. Authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. T's and C's apply.
Yo, it's me, Dizzy, in my time-travelling phone box. Alright, Mosa? Yeah, I'll be there soon, man. I just got to tell the people on the radio about Ladbrokes Casino.
Get a £50 welcome bonus for selected games when new customers bet £10 on Ladbrokes Casino.
What do you mean, what's the radio?
Ladbrokes, where the nation plays.
When the fun stops, stop.
18 plus, stake £10 on qualifying games. 40 times wagering requirements on bonus only, valid for 30 days. PayPal and certain deposit types excluded. Bets covering over 70% of roulette table excluded. Full terms at ladbrokes.com.
Choose Swell Heating and you get a lot more than an efficient boiler from top manufacturers like Quista Bosch. Visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
So, after Corbyn today says there should be a general election, or perhaps even possibly, maybe, depending on the circumstances, a second referendum, which of those two would you prefer? Or would you prefer neither? Do you think neither would actually at this stage sort anything out? Pat on Facebook says, we voted leave. What about a referendum on honouring the referendum result? Yeah, well, I know, Pat, and this is my feeling, that, you know, the vote of 2016 needs to be put in place, and if people want to have a second referendum down the track, they can do it. But to do it now, I think, would be simply wrong. Nigel says, what are your thoughts on a qualified majority for a possible referendum? I think what I do think about any referendum is there has to be a minimum turnout for it to count. And we had a caller on earlier saying that everyone that doesn't vote should be counted in with the status quo. That doesn't work for me, but I do think if you're going to make a big change, like, for example, if Scotland was to separate from the United Kingdom, I think there has to be a minimum threshold of those that turn out to vote, a 40 or 50% minimum threshold. That's my feeling. Give me your thoughts and feelings on this, 0345 6060 973. I'm going to Tynemouth in Devon to speak to Jordan, who's a new caller. Good evening.
Hiya, Nigel. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So, how do we solve it all?
So, how we solve this? There's only one solution here,
right?
And that is a general election. The reason for that is that we are a divided country, as you probably well know, and we're split all the way through the parties, through the people, everywhere. So, a referendum is just going to be another 52-48 scenario, whichever way it goes. It's not going to be a huge margin. So what we need is a general election, and the result of that election, when nobody wins outright, because Conservatives aren't going to win, Labour aren't going to win, and no one else will. So, I mean, I'd like to say we're heading into coalition politics, but let's face facts, we're already there, aren't we?
Oh, Jordan, we've been there since 2010, effectively, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. So what happens at that point is then either you and the Conservatives team up and get a majority, or Labour, SNP, Liberal Democrats, Greens, whoever they want to. I mean, all of them together probably would be a better idea. And the actual result of that, as far as I'm concerned, is not how we leave. We either stay or we leave. Either you guys sort it out and we leave, or those guys get in and don't, mess about claiming that, we're going to leave in this way or that way. None of the options are going to work. None of them are going to get through Parliament because none of them are very good.
Have we reached the point, Jordan? Basically what you're saying is that this is the fault line in British politics. You either want to stay or leave, and I agree with that. And people increasingly now identify not as Labour or Conservative, but as Leavers or Remainers.
Entirely.
And you're absolutely right with that. Do you think we've reached the point where basically both the Labour and Conservative parties too must decide what they really, really are?
I don't think that they need to. I think what they need to do is remove this false ego that they've got about themselves, i.e. the only two parties that exist, because they don't anymore. And what we need is proportional representation, and we will get that eventually. Maybe not, I'd love it to be in the next sort of few years, but maybe not in my lifetime, but this issue will resonate for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years, who knows? But the reality is that things have changed now. The seed has been sown, and we need a proportional representation system. If we had that proportional representation, we wouldn't have this problem, because your 4 million votes at 2015 or 2010 would have counted. Yeah. I mean, I'm not for UKIP or anything. I'm a very pro-Remain, but you deserved more seats.
It was a tough day. It was a tough day. Jordan, I get your point, and I do understand it. With reform and with coalitions forming on either side of the argument, we might actually get a parliament that made a bit of sense. David says, America wants to trade with us, so why don't politicians make Brexit happen so we can have this huge deal? Well, interestingly, US National Security Advisor John Bolton is in London today, and he made a comment on this to Sky News earlier.
Well, the president will do what the president wants. I think it's safe to say that he continues to look forward to an opportunity to have a bilateral trade deal with the United Kingdom. I think that's very important for both countries. And as soon as the United Kingdom is in a position to engage in those negotiations seriously, we're prepared to do so as well.
There we are. John Bolton talking very positively about Brexit, linking in with David's message. Now, John in Leicester says, change the first-past-the-post system to a USA-style electoral college. John, the American system is desperately complicated, and it works in a presidential system, but we don't have a presidential system. We elect MPs, and from those MPs comes a Prime Minister. I think what John's saying is we should move to a presidential type of system. I wonder how many people would support that. Let's try Rod, who's a new caller from Stowe Mary's in Essex. Good evening, Rod.
Hello, Nigel.
So, general election or second referendum, Rod?
For me, neither.
Right, okay.
No, definitely not.
Why not?
I think, well, the second referendum's a joke, really. I mean, we've had a referendum, the Leavers won, so we leave. I mean, I'm a Remainer, but I respect the result, so that's that one. As for an election, I've no idea what that's going to do. The fact that Comrade Corbyn might get in the power, God help us, I don't know. I perished the thought of that, so that's all he's been interested in since the beginning, I think. That's all I've ever heard him and his crew talk about since 2016 is another election.
I think all leaders of oppositions in the House of Commons want general elections and want to be Prime Minister, don't they?
Well, yeah, I don't want him. I mean, to me, that would be the worst.
But hang on, Rod. What if the country wanted him?
Well, then that's it. Then the country will get him, wouldn't they?
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, obviously, I shall make sure I vote to stop it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, that's neither here nor there at the end of the day. Yeah, the results, the same as a referendum. We've got to respect the results.
So, Rod, if we do neither, and I do understand, understand people's frustration. I mean, in many parts of England, people voted on the 2nd of May. They were asked to vote again on the 23rd of May. And I do understand people saying, hey, enough's enough. But somehow at some point, this deadlock does have to get broken, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think that's why, I mean, I don't know the way forward. I don't think there is a simple way forward, because it seems whoever's going to be, in Brussels trying to do this, UK Parliament are going to trash everything they try and do anyway. That's the way I look at it. So I can't see any doubt. I mean, to me, just get someone in, let the Conservatives elect a new leader, which is probably going to be Boris, and he's probably... the way I look at it, we're probably just going to crash out with a no deal anyway.
Well, maybe we will. But my argument, Rod, is we were supposed to leave on the 29th of March. We didn't, despite all the promises, and that's why we fought a European election. My argument is the next date's the 31st of October. If we don't leave on that, date, then Parliament has failed us again. Surely then it is reasonable to say, let's have a general election.
I don't know, because I don't think... I mean, I feel that if it's a general election, Labour will get in my opinion. I feel they will get in, and I can't see Jeremy Corbyn... I don't know. I mean, he'd be worse than Theresa May, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that would take some doing, wouldn't it? But there we are, Rod.
He could do it. If anyone could, Jeremy could.
All right, Rod, I get it. Thank you. Paul in Croydon says, the only democratic way to solve the Brexit situation is a second referendum, with either May's deal or WTO. The first referendum result must be honoured. Well, Paul, the point you're making is we voted once to leave. We then in a referendum could choose how we leave. And I understand that, but I struggle to see Parliament putting that choice to us, given its current makeup. And one of the reasons, folks, I'm, again, really opposed to a second referendum is this. So we have a second referendum this autumn. And the Leave vote, I'm pretty confident the Leave vote would be a fair bit higher than 52%. But let's just say 58% next time vote Leave. Would this Parliament, with the kind of people in it, even honour that result? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Adam is a new caller from Newport. Good evening, Adam.
Evening, Nigel. How are we doing?
We're doing okay-ish, but...
Yeah, I'd certainly go with ish. I mean, so in the 70s... lies and betrayal, which meant we joined the European Union. And then in 2016, absolute truth all round. And swing voters like myself quite happily thought, yeah, I can see 350 million being better for the NHS. Yeah, I pretty much think, Turkey joining the EU might not be a good idea. Yeah, this is going to be better for my children, so yeah, I'm out. And, that was all true, wasn't it, Nigel?
Well, Turkey joining the European Union has been on the agenda since 1961, and it's already part of the customs union. But I think, you can listen if you want to. I think the pretty extremist route that Erdogan has taken Turkey down means that it is not going to be joining anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, it was one of David Cameron's biggest ambitions as Prime Minister was for Turkey to be a member of the European Union. So yeah, that was absolutely true at the time, and circumstances change. The 350...
So circumstances change, Nigel. Circumstances change. More evidence comes to light.
More evidence comes to... Well, of course it does, Adam. I mean...
So as a swing voter, Nigel, am I not allowed my democratic right to review all of the evidence in front of us now, look at all of the options on the table and actually say, with all of the truth, with all of the deceit that has come out of the Leave campaign, not necessarily from yours, but from others, that actually the best thing we can do is stay in the European Union.
Well, Adam, we had a vote on this last week, didn't we? We had a vote on this last week.
No, we didn't have a vote on it last week. We had a vote on...
What happened?
We had a vote on the guys who were adamant leavers will still adamantly vote leave.
Oh, right. Is that not allowed, then?
Will adamantly vote remain.
Yeah.
There are people like me that sit in the middle that want to make an informed decision. Now, I believe I did last time, and I was lied to. Now, I am owed my democratic right to change my mind.
Well, Adam, hang on, Adam. You know, my parents were lied to. They were told it was a common market, and it wouldn't affect our sovereignty. And it took 45 years. To have a second go. Adam, you can have Adam, I'll give you a second referendum after this one has been implemented, and that, I think, is really the point.
You can't implement something which has fragmented the country to such a degree that nobody knows left from right, up or down anymore.
Well, once we implement it... We
are currently talking about the possible leader of this country being up on criminal charges for evidence that he produced to help me make my decision.
Well, Adam, I'm not going to discuss the details of that case, although if people were held to account for promises they'd made in manifestos, virtually everybody in Parliament would be in court tomorrow. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:30 in time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
President Trump's hinted he may meet up with Nigel and Conservative leadership frontrunner Boris Johnson during his state visit to the UK next week. The US leader, who arrives in London on Monday, has described them as being good friends. Jeremy Corbyn says a general election or a second referendum are now the only options if the UK faces a no-deal Brexit scenario. The Labour leader's been speaking after meeting the Irish Taoiseach in Dublin today. Leo Varadkar says he told Mr Corbyn the withdrawal agreement was closed and that the chances of the EU granting an extension past the new October deadline were pretty slim. The Health and Safety Executive started an investigation after reports a 6-year-old boy fell from a roller coaster at a theme park in North Yorkshire. Emergency crews were called to Lightwater Valley near Ripon this morning. LBC weather, cloudy and very mild for most of the UK tonight. Rain likely in the north and west of England, a low of 9 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7. LBC.
The Conservatives have accepted they must move to a new day and a new dawn. So who will lead the party and be Prime Minister? Charge of the Exchequer Philip Hammond. Why didn't you put your hat into the ring?
Because I wouldn't win.
Why wouldn't you ring?
The electorate for the Conservative Party are by a significant majority Eurosceptic. Many of them do not agree with the stance that I have taken to our future relationship with the European Union.
How confident are you you'll be part of the new administration?
Well, it depends on the policy of the government. I wouldn't be able to support a policy of leaving the European Union without a deal.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero, get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
Ah, spring. A time for new lambs, new birds, new bees, and a new boiler from British Gas. Looking to bring new life to your home? We're with you. So our new boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit with no deposit required and a 5-year British Gas warranty. Plus you'll get £200 off a new boiler when you book a quote by the 31st of May. And our existing home care customers will get £500 off. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
The world's longest wedding dress had a train that stretched for 5 miles. Pity the poor Page boys. For a frock, that's big. But it's not Euro Millions big. This Friday, it's a colossal £14 million jackpot. Euro Millions, amazing starts here.
Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Alexa, who is the greatest female athlete ever?
The jury's still out on that one.
Alexa, is Jessica Ennis-Hill the greatest female athlete?
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Come on, Alexa, do you even like athletics?
I don't have a body.
Take out Vitality Health Insurance today and we'll give you an Amazon Echo Dot, like Jess here. You also get an Amazon Smart Plug. And to find your inner athlete, enable the Alexa Vitality skill for fitness and nutrition tips. To get your Amazon bundle today, just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. New member offer available on certain Vitality plans until 30th of June 2019. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
Van Driver Radio.
A big shout out to Alfie, who's just completed his big plumbing contract early, but doesn't need those extra vans anymore. That must be driving him round the U-bend.
If only you'd hired them with Northgate. Their flexible plans let you return any vans that aren't earning their keep.
So they're no longer a drain on your bank account.
Exactly. Northgate call it Vanonomics.
For smart ways to hire vans for your business, search Northgate Vehicle Hire.
At the AA, we're always trying to make your journey better. Our mechanics fix 8 out of 10 cars at the roadside, usually within 30 minutes of arriving. You could say we're simply the best. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong song. Join today from just £4.50 a month. Visit theaa.com. The AA, because anything can happen. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
Bangers and mash, showers and power ballads, tea and toast. Some things just belong together. And if you own a small business, your double act is work you and life you. So at Starling Bank, we mix pleasure with business too. Manage your banking from one beautifully simple app with no monthly fees, instant spending notifications and 24/7 support. Apply in minutes today and say hello to the ultimate work-life bank balance. Just search for Starling Bank, the bank that works like you. Eligibility criteria applies.
Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
Jeremy Corbyn's been in Dublin today saying there must be a general election and perhaps if a deal is agreed by Parliament then maybe possibly perhaps a second referendum, not being very clear, all of which prompts Neil in Swansea to say, I have no idea what Corbyn stands for or wants anymore. But there is a debate in the country. What are we going to do to sort this out? Do we need a second referendum or would a general election sort it? And I've now moved to the position that says if we don't leave on the 31st of October, our Parliament has failed not once but twice, and it should at least be a chance to get rid of these people who failed so badly. Before we get back to that, firstly, a bit of good news. The World Cup cricket has started today and England have beaten South Africa by 104 runs. I'm pleased about that. I was invited to the Oval and I was too busy to go, says he through gritted teeth. And sticking with politics, Philip Hammond, he, the Chancellor, Eeyore, and the sort of staunch Remainer in the Cabinet. But what he said this morning I thought was very, very interesting. He was asked if there was a vote of no confidence in his own government because the government had gone for a WTO Brexit on the 31st of October, would he vote with his own government? Here was his answer.
I've been in Parliament for 22 years and I have never once voted against the Conservative whip, so it's not something that I would do lightly or enthusiastically, but I am very clear that the national interest trumps the party interest. And if I am presented with a difficult choice, I will act in what I believe is the best interest of this country.
I don't agree with him, but it's very interesting what he's saying. You know, we're getting very close to a point where the two-party system could just destroy itself, could just blow apart. In many ways, I'm beginning to feel the sooner that happens, the better it will be. So, second referendum or general election. Paul on Facebook says, I voted for Leave twice and would keep doing it in as many elections as possible. Some would argue, Paul, they'd voted Leave in 2016 in the referendum. They'd voted for Leave parties in the 2017 general election, and they voted for Leave parties last Thursday, and they keep voting Leave, and 3 years on, we haven't left. Glyn says, neither a second referendum nor a general election deliver what you were asked to do. Glyn, that's been my position, but as I say, if we go past the 31st of October, I think something has got to give. April says, no second referendum, but yes to a general election. Let's get rid of the dead wood. Let's go to Robert in Rochester. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening, Nigel.
So,
right, well, the question is, which would I say it would be? It would be a general election,
Right.
and I believe this is what they're playing towards, a Christmas general election, to make sure turnout is at an all-time low, and therefore guarantee their re-election. And that's the sad day that I see. Obviously, my opinion is that I think a general election is needed, but something that where we've got a long period of time to campaign to get people interested in voting.
Robert, why would, if we had a mid-December general election, why would that mean turnout would be low?
Because obviously people are busy over Christmas. The weather generally gets bad, and it generally changes the way that people are actually thinking. They're more insular about them.
Right, I get it. I get it. You're right. No, you are right. You are right. And similarly, if it was a February election, we would expect a lower turnout. Now, you are right about that. But Robert, if enough people wanted change, they could still be a low turnout and still vote for different parties. I mean, you could argue, Robert, there was quite a low turnout in the European elections last week, and yet quite a dramatic result.
Yes, it was a fantastic result for your party. However, it was still a low turnout. It was double the figures it has normally been, so well done for that.
Not quite.
Because I think it's your influence that caused the increase in voting for the European elections. But when it comes to the election that was a couple of weeks before, obviously I live in the southeast.
Yep.
There was an all-time low turnout for local elections, and we saw specifically where I live in Medway, the low turnout caused the normal parties to continue to win because those who voted for other parties, which was extraordinary, the postal vote system, the normal parties guaranteed their own victory, if you know what I mean.
No, I do. And I have to say, Robert, one of the reforms I want in this country is reform of the postal voting system. You know, postal votes used to be allowed for people who were 94 and infirm, soldiers serving overseas, people, who had reasons not to be in the country, and they would apply for a postal vote for that election. Blair started giving postal votes on demand, and of course what the parties did is they got as many of their known supporters on postal votes, and what happens, Robert, is the postman delivers the postal vote through the door, and 20 minutes later, someone knocks on the door from the party and says, "Can I collect your postal vote, please?" It's open to abuse, isn't it?
Yes, and although there's strict penalties, I've never actually seen it actually implemented, a 5-year ban. I've never seen it implemented, and I do question in various areas whether that is actually pressure on the constituents, because as far as I've been made aware, is after they've received their postal vote, they're not allowed to be campaigned questionably.
Wow.
I know that's not confirmed.
But it's unenforceable. And the other point, Robert, is they get their postal votes 2.5-3 weeks before the election date, when the whole debate in the cycle's at a different stage. It's very odd. Robert, thank you. Messages galore coming in. The question is not if, but how we have a second referendum, but what the question should be, says Nick from Bury. Hi, Nigel. I would just like to say, until Bercow goes, it's just a waste of time discussing it, as he has such a rotten hold on the whole scenario. He has to go ASAP, says Pauline. Certainly Bercow's comments in America yesterday have excited many of you. There's no left or right on Brexit. There's only leave or remain. The posh boy in Hazelmere and the bricklayer in Rotherham now share the same view, which means that the old party loyalties are gone. I want a general election. Thanks, Roland. Roland, to a very large degree, I absolutely am with you on that. I do think that people are wearing on their sleeves the badge, Leaver, Remainer, more than we've been Conservative for the last 4 generations, or Labour. Let's go to Dudley in the West Midlands and speak to Yvonne, a new caller. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, Nigel.
So, what's going to solve it, Yvonne?
Well, as a referendum and a general election, we've got to have a general election because they'll word that referendum so that we don't get what we voted for. I voted no back in 1975. I also worked on behalf of the Referendum Party yonks ago because increasingly, I've seen the power from this country disappear into Europe. We will be totally controlled by Europe if we don't get out. And the thought of that just frightens me for my children and my grandchildren. I'm old enough, it doesn't matter to me. But to see this country swallowed up into...
Well, Yvonne, that's obviously with you a very strongly held political opinion, and some take a different view, and they think that a big, strong, united Europe, with its own flags and anthems and armies is the future. But I'm asking,
you can't vote them out.
Well,
we're having enough trouble with our government.
Yvonne, look, we didn't vote for Mr Juncker, and we can't get rid of him. I'm on your side of the argument, of course, wholly on this. But in terms of the mess that British politics finds itself in now, would, in your view, a general election or a second referendum sort it out?
Only if you have a candidate in every borough, in every place, will it be sorted, and then we'll have a true representation. We will have an opposition that will fight against whatever is left of this mess. They are what you say, they are career politicians. My husband used to live in London, and we've been married 6 years, and he came up and he said, it surprises me, nobody talks of London. He said, I always thought that everybody up north would, that London would be the south. And you said something on a similar interview. So, it's really funny having you here and saying exactly the same thing. People in London don't think about the rest of the country. They're not even interested in the rest of the country.
Well, that is another one of the great divides that exist in this country today, and you're right to say that, actually. I think increasingly people beyond the confines of the M25 feel that London is a different place. Yvonne, I thank you for your call. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 6:45 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
President Trump's hinted he may meet up with Nigel and Conservative leadership contender Boris Johnson during his state visit to the UK next week. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn says a general election or a second referendum are now the only options if the UK faces a no-deal Brexit scenario. An investigation started after a young boy reportedly fell from a rollercoaster ride at a theme park in North Yorkshire. LBC weather, cloudy and very mild for most of the UK tonight. Some rain in the north and west, a low of 9 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler. There are queues on the M25 anti-clockwise for nearly an hour between Junction 3 for Swanley and the Dartford Tunnel. It's because of a breakdown and a lane is shut. Pentonville Road is shut eastbound at Islington High Street because of an accident causing delays on the approach. And there are queues on the Strand westbound approaching Trafalgar Square because of a breakdown. It's queuing on the North Circular, that's eastbound approaching the Cricket Billet interchange after an accident earlier on. And on the tubes there are severe delays on the entire Central line.
This is LBC.
The great British weather. One day you're cozying in with the family, the next you're chilling out in the garden. But whatever you're doing, Trusted Trader are always on hand to help. TrustedTrader.com have lots of really lovely tradespeople who are vetted, reviewed and reliable, unlike the weather. So for roofers who stop the rain coming in, gardeners for when the sun comes out, and other professionals in their trade, simply visit
TrustedTrader.com. The world's longest wedding dress had a train that stretched for 5 miles. Pity the poor page boys. For a frock, that's big. But it's not Euro Millions big. This Friday, it's a colossal £14 million jackpot. Euro Millions, amazing starts here.
Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Managed to fill those jobs yet?
Oh, I'm struggling.
You know Mark in HR? He was telling me about Hiring Hub. It connects you to loads of vetted specialist recruitment agencies, so you can widen your candidate search quickly, without any hassle.
Really?
Yeah. You post a job, and recruitment agencies you select send you their best candidates.
Want to fill professional jobs faster? Search Hiring Hub and post your job today.
Mark's nice, isn't he?
Really?
Creative, strategic, logical, healthy. Minds like these make small businesses brilliant. So it's important to support your team in mind and body. Bupa Select Health Insurance takes care of both. Join as a new small business and your team will have access to a free employee assistance program in your first year of cover. Bupa. Healthy minds, healthy business. To find out more, search Bupa Business. Offer ends 31st of May 2019. Terms and conditions apply.
I know what the Rachel hairstyle is. I know how to write hello on a calculator. I know the name of the world's first cloned sheep.
And I know which part of the room you should never put baby in. But I don't know my state pension.
Check your state pension and see how you can build on it with a workplace or other pension. Get to know your pension at yourpension.gov.uk.
For hundreds of years, Indian food has been about sharing great food with the people you love. For over 5 years, Manjal Restaurant have brought North and South India together in the heart of London. And due to its success, now we've come to Chigwell Loughton. Experience the essence of India and make memories with Manjal. Book now at manjalrestaurant.com.
Alexa, who is the best English rugby player of all time?
Good question. My favourite is Johnny Wilkinson.
Really? Oh, nice one. Alexa, who is the greatest rugby player of all time?
My favourite is definitely Sergio Perez.
Oh.
Take out Vitality Health Insurance today and we'll give you an Amazon Echo Dot, like Johnny here. You also get an Amazon Smart Plug. And to find your inner athlete, enable the Alexa Vitality skill for fitness and nutrition tips. To get your Amazon bundle today, just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. New member offer available on certain Vitality plans until 30th of June 2019. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Would a general election sort the whole thing out? Would a second referendum sort it out? I certainly don't believe a second referendum would. I think this lot in Parliament would ignore it when we voted leave again. But I do think we're going to have a general election if we don't leave on the 31st of October. And in general, the calls, text, tweets, Facebook messages I'm getting, I think Chris from Frodsham sums it up. He says, it's a general election for me, Nigel, to give the people a chance to ditch their MP if they did not support the wishes of their constituents. The MPs would prefer a second referendum because they don't fancy getting their P45s. And that's been quite consistent tonight. Many, many more of you thinking a general election is the right way out over a second referendum. Some of you wanting, understandably I think, wanting neither. Ryan is a new caller from Bolton. Good evening, Ryan.
Good evening.
So, which is it to be, Ryan?
If it was up to me and you had to choose one of the two, I'd have to say general election. Just for the fact that, in theory, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've had 5 referendums. We had the Conservatives saying, vote for us and we'll give you a referendum. Mm-hmm. We did that. Then we had the referendum. Then we had another general election. We said yes. We all voted for parties. Well, not all, but most of us voted for parties saying, yes, we will... we'll follow through with the referendum, and then we've just had a European election. So in theory, you could argue we've had 4 referendums already within the last God knows how many years.
I'm not quite sure I buy that, Ryan, but no, I don't buy that. Although we've had the chance to express an opinion, that's certainly true.
Yes, no, but but we all voted for this, and if we're going to have a general election, then we need the general election to get rid of the individuals that are in Parliament at the moment, just so we can get rid of this deadlock. I am a leaver. I massively support the fact that we should leave the EU and we should become independent. And unfortunately, as we are at the moment, we're not leaving. And God knows how many promises we've been given. You will leave.
I know. Mrs May, 108 times, you'll leave on March 29th. I mean, there is a risk, Ryan, though, isn't there? There is a risk that you have a general election and you finish up with the DUP holding the balance of power again. I mean, there is a risk of that.
There is, but what do we do at the moment? Don't get me wrong, I'd rather just leave. I would rather just leave without a referendum or a general election. But unfortunately, where we stand at the moment, we've got politicians being threatened to have legal action taken against them. Just because of what they said. Does this mean Theresa May now is going to get taken to court?
Ryan, I honestly, I'm concerned about this because otherwise everybody would be. I mean, there'd be no one left, would there? Ryan, I thank you for your call. Just to really help me here, I've got a comment here saying, personally, I would prefer a Scottish independence referendum. Yeah, thanks for that. And of course, Nicola Sturgeon very much wants another Scottish referendum, and she wants Scotland to remain within the European Union. Let's go to a new caller from Manchester called George. George, which is it to be?
Hi, Nigel. I'm 21 and I voted to remain. However, I do actually support us leaving because I think the country voted for it and people need to get what they voted for. My trouble with the general election is the way that the parties are voted in at the moment, I can't see any new parties getting voted in. So I think what you'd end up with is just a coalition, probably run by Labour, which, at the end of the day, I don't think is a great idea because they want to keep us in the European Union at the end of the day.
So, George, am I hearing a plea for a different type of voting system?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I have to say, having led a party to 4 million votes and 1 seat, very difficult for me not to agree with you.
Indeed, and I also think, a lot of people my age want to remain because, quite frankly, they can't accept the result of the referendum, which I did vote to remain, and I think that we need to leave. So I think the best option is a second referendum because I honestly think if there is another second referendum, Leave will win again.
Oh, George, I think Leave would win with a bigger majority, but I also think this Parliament would still do their absolute best to dishonour it.
Yeah, I honestly think they've changed things.
George, I'm losing you. Your line's cracking up, but George there, a Remainer who thinks we have to leave. George, has anyone word for people like George? He's a Democrat. Paul from Manchester says, Farage, get real. When May lost her majority for her and her government, that was the end of your Brexit and us leaving the EU. Paul, you may think that. Actually, what it meant was it's going to take longer and there are more battles to fight. I still absolutely believe that Brexit will happen because I think the genie is out of the bottle. We're going to Barnsley to speak to Jordan. Good evening.
Hi, Nigel. You all right?
I'm all right. So, what's it to be? A general election or a referendum?
Yeah, so I actually think they could pull off both.
Both? Oh, wow. OK. Talk me through it, please.
Yep, so I think if they called a general election sooner rather than later, they could have a chance for both major parties, the Conservatives and Labour, to fully rebuild their manifestos, one for pro-Brexit, one for pro-Remain, and then the two parties can have at it and we can finally get this over and done with one way or another. That's
assuming, Jordan, that Labour becomes a totally Remain party.
It is, yep, and obviously at the moment it's looking very unlikely because they're all squabbling amongst themselves, and it's very annoying.
It's also assuming that the Conservative Party genuinely wants to leave.
There is also that as well, but I think if they don't do something like that, it's going to go the way where the two-party system breaks, which I'm sure is not what they personally want. So I think if they don't do that, then they're headed for disaster.
Do you think the two-party system breaking would be a bad thing?
Not necessarily. It's nice to see other parties getting a chance. We're becoming more of a democratic country where we don't just vote one way or the other. We're getting more chances to vote for different kind of important issues, like the Green Party with the environment. But I think from the Conservative and Labour point of view, they don't want to ruin what they've got going, and that's the only way I think they can keep it going.
You may be right. At the moment, they're trying to keep, the two wings of their parties together, and it's not really working. Jordan, I thank you. Craig in Gateshead, raising a point that we've heard already tonight, but it's becoming stronger, I sense. He says, Nigel, we keep on hearing the country is divided. The country is not divided. The problem is the London area and Parliament. The rest of the country spoke once again with a strong voice last Thursday. And Craig, I have to say, there is a strong feeling that London versus the rest, it is one of the big divisions that exists today. My last caller tonight is David, a new caller from Manchester. Good evening, David.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I am okay-ish. Come on, give me a solution. You're the last. Right. You've got a minute to tell us all how to solve everything.
Nigel,
you've got a solution. Fantastic. Right.
You are the man to implement it. Right. For democracy itself to survive in this nation, the vote from 2016 has to be respected. That is beyond question. That has to happen. So my proposal is we leave on the 31st of October, deal or no deal, we're out. That's it. However, I am fully aware that the country is split on this issue. I'm a firm leaver. I'm fully committed to leaving the European Union. I would vote leave time and time again. However, I know my neighbour next door. He's a Remainer, and no matter what we decide and discuss between ourselves, I can never convince him. He can't convince me. The problem is not the people of this country. It's not the vote to leave that's been the issue. The problem has been Westminster. It's been our parliamentarians. It's been our MPs. From Heath to Major,
All right.
to Brown, to Black.
So how do we solve it, David?
How do we solve it? We leave on the 31st of October. Deal or no deal, we respect democracy.
David, I don't disagree with
We
you.
then have another referendum, but this time we put our cards on the table. The EU has always wanted to go to this federal states of Europe, and they've tried to do this slow creep and just sort of usher us into it without us realising. Well, let's put the cards on the table. I want to see MPs in London campaigning to make themselves unemployed, like you've been doing for the last 25 years.
David, if you're
in or out, fully in or fully out.
Well, let's have it, but the current Parliament wouldn't respect it, and I hope you and your neighbour can make up at some point. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'll be back on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick, but up next, it's Ian Dale.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Coming up at 8, a new report is recommending a cut in university tuition fees to £7,500 a year and the reintroduction of means-tested maintenance.